G'day. I've come out to the village of Tharwa today. It's about 6 kilometres from the southern suburbs of Canberra, the suburb of Banks actually. I wanted to come out to Tharwa to the little hill behind here, just in front of Mount Tennant. Mount Tennant was named after a bush ranger who terrorised the local landholders, homesteads around the area around 1825, around that era. Onyong was a Aboriginal warrior who was of the Ngambri people. Ngambri people are the traditional owners of Canberra and surrounding areas. He was born in 1800 and died in 1852 in a tribal dispute at Kappakumbalong. Kappakumbalong's just around the corner there. But Onyong is buried on that hill you can see just in front of the mountains there, in front of Mount Tennant. But we're heading into the village of Tharwa now. I've never been there to this site before, and I just wanted to check it out. We're coming up to the village of Tharwa now. We're going to cross the Tharwa Bridge. It was one of the first bridges across the Murrumbidgee River. It was built in 1895, but this has been a crossing place for the Ngambri people for a long time before European settlement. But that's the hill you can see up the background there. We're going to go down via the river, which is located just down here. I see ACT Parks and Conservation Service are down here at the moment. The Murrumbidgee River is behind those blackberry bushes, which shouldn't be there. But that's the Murrumbidgee just through there, and that's the Onyong Hill, and up there somewhere is the gravesite of Onyong. The story of Onyong is actually a bit of a sad story. It shows the attitudes of European settlers to the local Indigenous people back in the early days of European settlement. I don't actually know where the gravesite is. Only the Ngambri people know where the gravesite's actually located, and they keep it secret. But there's a reason for that. I'll tell you the story a bit later on about what ended up happening to the remains of Onyong. Somewhere up on that hill, Onyong's remains are located, or the gravesite at any rate. One of the early settlers, right, of the area, he wrote about the burial, described the actual circumstances and what happened at the time of the burial. The body was trussed in the knee-elbow position, and the fat about the kidneys was removed. The fat was supposed to possess great virtues and was distributed to the jinns, who carried it in the bags which were hung from their necks. A hole was dug in the ground, at the bottom of which a small tunnel was excavated. In this tunnel the body was placed, together with the chief's weapons, a broken spear, shield, nulla nulla, boomerang, tomahawk, opossum rug, and other items for use in the next world. The grave was then filled in. So that's about as close as I can get to wherever Onyong is buried. Onyong actually wasn't his name. That was the European sort of interpretation of his name. I can't actually pronounce it, so I'll just add it down here on the video. Onyong was originally from the area of Lake George, which is also part of Ngambri country, and the Ngambri people actually dispute Ngunnawal ownership of this area. They actually want the Ngunnawal welcome signs changed. The Ngambri people can trace their lineage back to Onyong, who was he actually had a king plate that was given by the Europeans for tribal leaders at the time. Onyong had a lot of interactions with the early settlers in regards to a fellow by the name of Garrett Cotter, who the Cotter Dam and Cotter River are named after. That whole area is known as the Cotter. He was a ex-convict, convict at the time that was accused of horse stealing, and he was punished by being sent to the limits of location, which was basically being sent off into the bush to look after himself. And the local Ngambri people helped him survive and to flourish. Later on, he became quite a successful settler himself. But Onyong helped him out. They were apparently great mates. Onyong had a sort of a checkered relationship with the European settlers. One settler actually shot him in the leg. I think that was about 1837. So seeing as Onyong was born in 1800, he would have been about 37 years of age when he was shot. He was apparently spearing cattle, and the settler didn't like it at all. But Onyong was eventually killed in a tribal dispute at Kapakumbalong, which isn't far from here, only a kilometre. The sad part of the story was as follows. Well, that was the end of that worthy, with the exception that a number of years later a man named Smithy dug up the skull and with questionable taste had it made into a sugar bowl, which I actually saw in use on his table. Yeah, so the way the early settlers, some were good to the Ngambri people. There's records of people being kind to them, and there's also records of other settlers being very cruel to them. I was only reading last night an article in The Guardian from quite a few years ago. It was written, and it was describing the body parts held by the National Museum in their storage facilities out in Mitchell. They're trying to repatriate a lot of the remains which have been collected from around the world and from museums in Australia and out of private collections. I was quite shocked to hear that in that article it claimed it knew where Onyong's skull was and in the hands of a private collector. But as they said in the article, although a few attempts at contacting the private collector, they got no response. So here we are north of the Tharwa Bridge. That's the hill that Onyong, with what's left of his remains, are. His headless remains. This is the Murrumbidgee River, and very shallow at this point. So that's why it was a crossing point for the Indigenous peoples for thousands of years, and the European settlers when they first came here before the bridge was built in 1895.